So full disclosure here, in case the title of the video wasn't enough for you, I'm taking this time to talk about the offline rosters for NHL 17. Well, semi-offline. Obviously, this also applies to the roster that you get for standard versus mode and shootouts, but you get my point. If you mainly play Ultimate Team, I don't expect you to care. If you mainly play EASHL, I don't expect you to care. Hell, even some people who do play Be a Pro and franchise mode won't care that much, if at all. And I can fully admit, I am a stickler for detail. I want to have the most realistic sim that I can possibly have, but I don't feel like what I'm going to discuss in this video is asking too much from EA. Am I saying that anything discussed here is more important than gameplay, focusing on Ultimate Team, or anything else? No, but I don't think it's right for the rosters to be in the state that they are currently in and have been in for a while at the, just at the moment. And I should say this too, your last warning, I will be making the ultimate taboo comparison. I will be mentioning FIFA. So first up, a quick little glitch here, for lack of a better term, that's been in the game for years. As you can see here, I'm editing Max McCormick of the Binghamton Senators, and no matter what potential I set him to, it changes it to whatever the hell it feels like. Kind of an issue when you're editing a player who you feel is under or overrated. And for McCormick, obviously having spent time with the Ottawa Sens last year, the goal was to make him better and to actually give him a chance to make their lineup throughout a sim, but apparently that's not allowed. As I said, this glitch has been in the game for years at this point. It doesn't happen all the time or with every player, but when I and others feel like you have to edit as many players as you do, it becomes a problem. Next up, we're talking about the lack of attention to detail, if not the lack of effort entirely, if we're calling a spade here, to the CHL and the European leagues as far as potentials go. Simply put, most franchise sims play out relatively the same as far as the players that you will see. You have the same prospects that are already on teams that are guaranteed to end up being pretty good. Mason McDonald is a good example on Calgary, Evan Fitzpatrick in St. Louis. I don't know why goalies came to mind, but then obviously throughout the years you'll get Nolan Patrick in the first draft, Joe Veleno the year after. There's a couple other guys that'll constantly pop up. And then you have the computer-generated players, which, side tangent here, complete side tangent, let me get off track for a minute. Can we please get more region-appropriate names? FIFA does it. They knew it was an issue, they went in and they fixed it. I don't think it's unreasonable to not have a Hiroshi Tanahashi from Ireland, so can we please not have a Joe Smith from Austria? Just a minor request. It just breaks the immersion a little bit. Again, that was a side tangent. My point is, getting back on track, there's a ton of players in the CHL and the Euro Leagues who are very underrated and misrepresented, whether it's certain players that have been drafted in the past few years or so, or upcoming talent. You will rarely see certain players make the cut that absolutely should and absolutely will be NHL players in the next few years. For example, from the 2015 draft, we have defenseman Matt Spencer taken by Tampa in the early to mid-second round. Spoiler alert, he isn't top 4 in the most recent roster update. That is, of course, my edit. He is AHL potential. I'd say that's an issue when a second-round pick will never see the NHL level in a franchise mode sim. Same thing from the 2016 draft with Jordan Kyrou, a familiar name if you've watched some of my franchise mode series. An early second rounder from St. Louis from this year, and again, he is AHL potential. That is a massive problem. Those are only 2 examples. There are plenty more. Feel free to go through the 3 CHL leagues and just see how many guys, and I'm not talking like And you can't even be like, oh, well, they're from 2012 or something like that, because obviously they'd be overage. These are recent players that are highly, highly undervalued. It's a massive problem, and simply a lack of caring on EA's part. And again, I get it. It's not the most important thing to focus on, but every year, myself and countless others, whether they do it online or offline, obviously online, you have guys like over on Operation Sports that do a great job every year. You have people that, like myself, that just probably do it themselves every year, when really that shouldn't be the case. It would require very little effort on EA's part. And I know some people are going to say, oh, well, if it requires such little effort, why can't you just do it every year? Don't you think it's something EA should be able to do? It's a 1 to 3 man job tops. And along with that, there's no excuse to not have a weekly update. And I don't know, guys. And talking about prospects coming up from the 2017 draft and onward, someone like Jacob Paquette is massively underrated, despite being one of the more highly rated prospects coming up in the next year or so. And you'll very rarely see him make the cut in your sim, and that is an issue. There's a wonderful site called EliteProspects.com. I'm sure many of you have heard of it, and they have a lovely, lovely draft section on their site where they take all of the scouting resources so you can see who to look out for in the upcoming draft. The same tools used by TSN, NBC, whoever else covers the draft that you hear them say every year. Oh, Jacob Chychrun was 3rd in Central Scouting. Well, they have the Central Scouting resources on their site. It's not that hard to find. It's not that hard to implement into the roster update to accurately set up these prospects to what they should be. The last bit here has to do with the free agent list. Feel free to see how long it takes you to scroll down the entire list on EA's roster and compare it to what you are seeing right now. The difference, on my list, we have no retired players, no duplicates. Yes, there are duplicates, ladies and gentlemen. There are multiple versions of the same player in this roster. It's amazing. And not just from the European leagues. You have guys from the AHL, like Stu Bickle. It's great. And the biggest help for making that list shorter is removing players who are signed in leagues that aren't in the game. Now, the first 2 removals speak for themselves. There's no excuse for retired players, and there's definitely no excuse for duplicate players. That's just a lack of attention to detail, a lack of caring. The others, though, although I should say, I guess maybe there's something in a contract where it says, hey, leave Dan Boyle in because whatever. But there's no reason for it. But the other one that I mentioned, as far as taking players out from non-4 or from leagues that aren't in NHL, and this again is a FIFA comparison, with a few exceptions, FIFA removes players who are signed to leagues that aren't in their game, and that makes things run much more smoothly. That's simply the right way to go about it. Having all those players just clogs up the system. The free agent list loads and sorts more slowly. The retired players list moves slowly. The draft, I'm stumbling over everything. It's all affected, is my point, by the decision to leave these players in the game. So where did I put them? I moved them over to the international teams. All of my international teams are filled with these type of players who simply don't need to be or simply shouldn't be in the game. I'll tack this on as well, because as far as missing players go, that's a big complaint for a lot of people, but I at least understand that EA's hands are tied with some of the players they can and cannot add. A lot of it has to do with the Players Association, and that's a long rabbit hole to go down. It's why Austin Matthews wasn't on Toronto until the very first roster update, but there are some players, mainly in the AHL, that should have been added in prior years and have played the prior year in the AHL. You'll have a ton of guys that jumped over from college, played a handful of games, if not more, in the AHL, and still simply aren't there. For that, though, there is another great site that's been up for the past 7 or 8 years now, and that is Peter Puck. Link down in the description for them as well. You can check them out. They do a marvelous job of player movements, and specifically players that you can create that aren't in the game. Again, EA's hands are tied in some aspects, but Peter Puck does a great job with creative players, goalie equipment, and more. Make sure to check them out. And actually, one more thing. Why not? Obviously, having guys like Pronger and Datsuk is fine. I'm cool with that. The cap hit still being there really only adds to the realism. But can we not just agree by default they should be lowered to an overall that results in them not being released, but also not being a 90 overall or whatever the hell Pavel Datsyuk still is. Can we just agree on that? Again, a little bit of work that makes things much more realistic. So that's it, though. That's it. Don't worry. I'm done complaining for now. If I forgot anything, I will bring it up in the video that I will still be making, showing off the changes I have made prior to my next franchise mode. For me, it's worth the time investment to get the rosters into a realistic spot because it differentiates my series from everyone else's. It gives you a unique sim. You'll be seeing different players show up that simply don't show up for other guys, and I'll have this roster for the rest of the year. We are only 2 months into NHL. We got a long way to go, and yeah, I'll have this roster at my disposal for the rest of the year. So to me, it's worth it. Like I said, not everyone will care. Most people won't make it to the end of this video, but legitimately, I do believe that these are changes that need to be made and should be made by EA. More than anything, it's time-consuming, but it can and should be done. And if it's done properly, it wouldn't be as time-consuming because you wouldn't have to dig yourself out of the hole that you start in because you just didn't pay attention to it. Hell, as it is, I haven't even complained about how poorly they use their attribute system because that's an entirely different discussion for an entirely different time. I'm out for now, guys. EA, hire me. Ask me to help. Do something, because I'll do it. I'll do it for a somewhat cheap fee, and everybody can be happy. Pay me in hot packs, pay me in money, pay me in donuts. I don't care. I'm out, guys. Take it easy.